Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be talking about, do your Vegas Golden Knights really need an enforcer on this team, or is this team just good where it is? So we're going to cover all of that here on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub.
PR Connections Radio presents.
Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Ian Rachiele, host of Vegas Hockey Hub, why is this a conversation? Why is this a topic? The Vegas Golden Knights, do they need an enforcer? Well, what's the reason for this show? Well, as somebody who speaks to Golden Knights fans, as someone who talks to people who are very passionate about your Vegas Golden Knights, very recently I had a very nice dialogue with an older Golden Knights fan, and they were talking all about, I miss Ryan Reeves, I miss Revo, and we need to add more physicality. We need more of that fighting mentality to the Vegas Golden Knights organization. And I was trying to explain to this Vegas Golden Knights fan that, yes, Ryan Reeves is a fan favorite. He will always be a fan favorite for what he did with the Golden Knights organization in the years that he was here in Vegas. Never going to take that away from him. But I disagree on the notion that Vegas needs a Ryan Reeves. All right, I kind of disagree with the idea that the Vegas Golden Knights need someone whose sole purpose is to be physical. The Vegas Golden Knights need someone that is going to be an enforcer. I respectfully disagree. And after having this dialogue and this conversation with this Golden Knights fan, I decided, you know what? I have a studio, I have a platform, and I have an internet radio station on PR Connections Radio that I can make a video on. So I came back to City National Arena and having that conversation, sitting down right here, hit the record button, and I'm talking to everyone watching all around the world, including you who's watching this video. And I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of the Vegas Golden Knights needing an enforcer. And I'm going to explain why there is two reasons why you could use one, and there's two reasons why you don't need one when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights organization. So this video, I just wanted to very quickly make this, just kind of do this episode for today's episode, and just kind of talk about the conversation I had with a Golden Knights fan, because it was a passionate dialogue. It was a good conversation. And by the way, if you're the person I was talking to, I want to let you know, I'm not attacking you. All right, I'm not going to be calling you any names. I'm not going to be doing any of that. I'm not going to be someone that's going to be, oh, that SOB. No, I'm simply just responding to the conversation that we had very recently, because you got me thinking about, do Vegas need an enforcer or not? So that's what this video is really about. And we're going to get into the first reason as to why they would need an enforcer in just a minute here on Vegas Hockey. Now, when you are focusing on the two pros of Vegas needing an enforcer, with Vegas needing some physicality on this team, the first pro is going to be the fact that, come playoff time, all right, when it gets to that point, when the Vegas Golden Knights are in the playoffs and you're in a 7-game series, you need someone that is going to look out for Jack Eichel. You're going to need someone that's going to look out for Mark Stone. You're going to have some guys that, if somebody runs into the goaltender, if somebody, does a snow shower onto your goaltender, you're going to immediately put them in check. I understand the purpose of an enforcer. There's somebody who enforces the rules and unwritten rules of hockey. I get that. All right. And from a pro perspective, you're someone who believes in that. If you're someone who truly thinks that a guy like Ryan Reeves deserves to come back to Vegas and have a farewell run at some point, that's up to you. That's fine. I have no issue with that. Okay? But if you need somebody that is going to be an enforcer and someone who's going to help out your goalie and help out your superstar, we technically have one. When it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights organization, there are 2 or 3 guys who step up and defend their teammates if something goes wrong. The first one, and he's been doing it for 8 seasons, and that's Brayden McNabb. Brayden McNabb has been known, even before he got to Vegas, as being a team player, as being someone who is going to step up and defend his teammates no matter what. He did it in LA. He's done it in Vegas throughout his career. And with him being a durable and consistent 82-game player, what has it been now? The last 2 seasons that Brayden McNabb has played every single game in the regular season. He would be an enforcer type guy, someone who enforces those rules for your Vegas Golden Knights. So you already have a guy like Brayden McNabb who can do that. You also have a guy like Brett Howden, for example, a player who can defend his teammates, and someone like Brett Howden who has actually taken penalties in the past as a way to enforce those unwritten rules and stepping up for his teammates if something goes awry. So you have a Brett Howden, you have a Brayden McNabb, and you have a Nicholas Hague. Nicholas Hague, with his size, has been known to drop the gloves and fight, and is known to take penalties on behalf of his teammates when it is appropriate and when it's the right time. So that first pro about, we need an enforcer because he needs to enforce those unwritten rules, just like Ryan Reeves did back in the day. Well, I make a thing to you is that if you believe in that pro, and if you're going to stand by that first pro, fine. But Vegas already has 3 on the roster. You already have a McNabb, you have a Hague, and you have a Howden who are willing to do exactly that. So when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, does Vegas need an enforcer? I will say that, an unwritten rule of hockey, these are all hockey players. They have spent their entire lives playing this game. They know the unwritten rules. They know what comes from a guy getting a wrong hit. They know what comes from making a wrong move and running into somebody at the wrong spot or at the wrong angle. So for that first pro, I'm going to sit here and say that you don't need a Ryan Reeves for that when you have 20 players on the ice and you have a locker room of guys who already know about it. And then the second pro of, Vegas, enforcer, like the second pro that some people have tried to make is that Ryan Reeves had one purpose and had one role on the team. And he knew what that was. He understood what he had to do, and he went out and he accomplished it. And he did exactly what he needed to do when the playoffs happened, regular season, playoffs, preseason, regardless of what it was. He knew his job. He got paid a certain amount for that job, and he went out and executed it. All right. And for people who believe in that idea of, he has one goal, he has one purpose, he has one responsibility, and he is going to go out and he is going to accomplish that goal, fine. If you want to accept that, if you want to say that there is a guy who's on the 3rd line, 4th line, someone on the bottom 6 forward, if there's someone who's a 3rd defensive pairing on this team, and their expectation is just to do one of 5 tools, okay. But does it have to be an enforcer, though? Does a roster spot have to be filled with just physicality? I guess. Does one role have to be about just getting into fights in the modern world, the NHL, where fights are actually being less and less involved in the NHL? Because when it comes to the pro of, having a skill set and just focusing on it, then hey, good for you. That's good. I'm happy for you if you believe in that. But if you're going to go down that road, okay, then I have to ask yourself, is there a player on the Vegas Golden Knights who only has one purpose? Look at the entire roster, all right? If you have the roster pulled up in front of you, if you're on NHL.com, if you're on Hockey Reference, if you're on Puckpedia.com, whatever website you're on, look at the Golden Knights roster and ask yourself a really realistic question. Is there a player on the forwards or defensive end that has one purpose and that's it? Is he just a goal scorer and that's it? Is he a facilitator? Does he just pass the puck and that's it? Is there someone who's just a physical playmaker, a guy who's going to get into fights, that's his role, that's it? Is there someone who just plays defense and their only job is playing defense and getting back on the back check and making sure that they block shots? Is that it? Or is there a guy who's only on the team because he's a leader in the locker room? All right, his leadership quality is the only reason why he is on the roster and somewhere in the lineup, because he's good for the locker room. Not necessarily as great on the ice, but his leadership skills and his ability to be a team leader is his sole purpose for being on the team. Because if you can go in the comments section, you can tell me a guy who only has one tool in his tool belt, I will be willing to listen to that second pro. But personally, I can't think of that. So those are the two pros, all right? If you are on that camp of Vegas needing an enforcer, the Vegas Golden Knights, they need to have somebody like a Ryan Reeves, okay? If you're on that side of the argument of, okay, the reason why is because they need somebody who's going to enforce the unwritten rules and the rules itself of hockey, and you have to have someone that is a one-tool player, someone who's a one-dimension type of guy, someone who knows their role and they're going to execute it to perfection. Okay, I'm going to say to you, if you're on that side of the fence, if you're on that argument, I'm not going to bash you. I'm not going to critique you. I'm going to say is that is not where your host, Ian Rachiele, is on. That is where the person that I was talking to at City National Arena was on, but that's not where I am at. So the two cons of Vegas needing an enforcer, okay? The first reason why I brought up the fact that Vegas does not need that is because the Vegas Golden Knights have so many forwards and so many talented guys on the roster that the first reason why you don't need an enforcer is because the other skill sets outshine and outproduce an enforcer. Having players on this team that can shoot, that can skate, that can play at a certain level is a reason why you don't need an enforcer. If you have guys who are going to shoot the puck and they're going to score X amount of goals, that is going to outperform a guy who's just going to drop the gloves. If you have someone who is a good passer and they can pass the puck around and get the puck into the back of the net by giving it to someone else, a good facilitator is a lot more than just a guy who's going to make good, clean hits and a guy who's going to accept necessary penalties on the opposite end. I truly believe that this Vegas Golden Knights roster is one of the most talented rosters we have seen in Vegas Golden Knights history. And because you have the talent and because you have all these guys that are going to be part of this roster, and they have two, three, even four tools in their belt, it makes you a better team as an overall unit. You have more depth to play with. Let's say that you have 14 forwards. If all 14 of those forwards have certain skill sets that are a bonus to the team, that is more valuable. It is more of a commodity to Vegas to have a guy like that. So, respectfully, that is the first con. The first con of having an enforcer is that it takes away that position. It takes away a spot in the starting lineup for a skilled forward, for a center, for a winger, for someone who is able to generate more offense, to generate more defense. And that is what gets taken away by having an enforcer on the roster and in the starting lineup. Now, getting into that second part, okay, getting into part 2 of the con for Vegas needing an enforcer. And this second part really has to do with who was brought up in the conversation. Now, when we were talking, we were having this back and forth, Ryan Reaves kept getting mentioned, kept getting brought up. Ryan Reaves, Revo. That was the conversation that kept getting brought up because he was an enforcer. He was a fighter. He was a brawler. He was a, guy that would like to scrap, have scrums. And this is nothing to Ryan Reaves, the person. All right. I have nothing against Ryan Reaves, the person. Seems like a nice person. Seems like someone that, you could probably have a beer with. You met him at a bar. That would be someone that personally nothing against. But Ryan Reaves as a player is a con. And the second part of this con is Ryan Reaves himself. Ryan Reaves, at his age, he is not an everyday player. At his age, he is not someone that you're going to get a lot of games out of in the regular season. And more importantly, when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, with his age and with the limited, availability, how many games would you have from Ryan Reaves, even if he did come back to the Golden Knights organization? How many games would he play if he did put on that gold and that gray jersey one more time for your Vegas Golden Knights organization? Would it be 10? Would it be 20? Let's say, would it be half the year? Would it be 40? 50, I would say at the most if you're cutting it there. I mean, when it comes to Ryan Reaves, you have to ask yourself, this isn't the guy that they got in the 2018 NHL trade deadline who was here for a couple of years, who was a consistent guy on the fourth line. And the reason I bring this up as a con is look at Ryan Reaves post-Vegas. New York Rangers, that tenure was really not that long, and you didn't see as many games out there as you normally would have seen. Then he goes to Minnesota. He's there for a little bit. Everything happened in there. And then you go to Toronto, and he's kind of been in Toronto for a little bit now. But even then, he's not an everyday guy. In fact, there's some games where he's, been a healthy scratch for X amount of games in a row. There's been suspensions. So when it comes to Ryan Reaves, you have to ask yourself an actual question, and that would be, can he even be an everyday guy, or what usage would you get out of him if you brought him back? So, the first con that I mentioned is that, if you have an enforcer on the bottom six, it takes away a spot from someone with skill sets that are more than that. You're taking away a spot in the starting lineup for someone who could be better for the team as a whole. And the second con would be if Vegas, has an enforcer, Vegas, has Ryan Reaves for himself at his age, would he be able to play as many games as needed to even be useful for the Vegas Golden Knights at this point in time? So, I wanted to very quickly just make this video and talk about, does Vegas need an enforcer? Does Vegas even need a Ryan Reaves type of player? And I gave you the two pros, okay? The first pro is that when you are a one-tool guy, when you're someone who knows what his strengths are, that he will take that responsibility and that role, and he will do what he needs to do. He understands his role. That was pro number one. And then pro number two is that when it comes to enforcing the unwritten rules of the NHL and hockey itself, they will enforce that. And then the two cons is that con number one, it takes away a roster spot in the starting lineup for someone who's more skillful and someone who has more of a skill set than just one responsibility. And then con number two alludes to Ryan Reaves himself, who the conversation was brought up about, and could he still be of use in the Golden Knights organization at this point in time? Now, quick little side note with Ryan Reaves, the Toronto Maple Leafs, I almost said the Toronto Blue Jays, by the way. Sorry about that. Baseball season's on my mind. But when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, he's still on contract with Toronto. So unless the Golden Knights made a trade for Ryan Reaves, or in a rare situation, he gets put on waivers by Toronto, that's the only two ways Vegas could go out and get him. It's not like he's a UFA just waiting by the phone, waiting to get a phone call. He's still under contract. He still has a deal with Toronto. And, it'll be curious to see what happens next year. Next year, could Vegas hypothetically put him on a 1-year veteran minimum contract? I guess. I guess the Vegas Golden Knights down the road could have him come back as kind of a farewell situation. But wait a minute. Wouldn't St. Louis make more sense for a farewell one-day contract? I kind of feel like this is an argument that some Golden Knights players have had on this show before. If Ryan Reaves would going to retire on a one-day contract, would it be Vegas or would it be St. Louis, where he spent about a decade of his career with that organization? So with Ryan Reaves, like I said, personally, I wish him well. I've interacted with him once or twice when he was with the Vegas Golden Knights. Kind person, someone who's a really nice guy. But when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, I think when it comes to an enforcer, you already have Braden McNabb, you have a Nicholas Hague, you have a Brett Howden, and I don't really think that you need a Ryan Reaves at this point. Now, when it comes to if there was somebody outside of Ryan Reaves, if you're looking at free agents and you're looking at names of people that could be available to the Vegas Golden Knights, I don't know who you would go with. Just off the top of my head, Cal Clutterbuck. When's the last time I've seen him play with the New York Islanders? It's been a minute since I've seen Cal Clutterbuck be in the NHL. Are we going to go to the old well, or are we going to go get Boston Bruin Milan Lucic? Everybody remember his thing with Calgary and Edmonton and even LA at one point. If you want an enforcer, you want to go with somebody, I guess, a little more modern, maybe Kyle Clifford. From the LA and Toronto situation. So when it comes to an enforcer, I kind of sit there and I look at this argument and I've explained the pros, I've explained the cons, and really what I'm trying to say on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub is that when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, personally, you don't need an enforcer. Personally, Ryan Reaves, who is about 37 years old, he's been in the NHL. He's been playing professional hockey for about 20 years now. You don't need to have that reunion come back. You'd have, like I said, you have to trade for him. You have to get him on waivers if that ever became a possibility. It's just, I don't see it being a situation involving your Vegas Golden Knights. I really don't see how beneficial it would be. And like I said, even if you didn't go with Ryan Reaves and you try to pivot and try to go to somebody else who is an enforcer, or someone who can be a guy that drops the gloves and be more physical, I don't see a lot of guys on lists that could be of usage. We're not going to go and get those guys that can be, Pat Maroon, I highly doubt would find a way to come to Vegas. You know what I mean? So, really to end this conversation, and like I said, I just wanted to very quickly make this video. Came back from State National Arena, had a really good conversation with a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights, and I was kind of asking around, seeing, what do you think about the Golden Knights right now? Like, what are you thinking about? And they just kept talking, and this one fan had a really good dialogue and a good back and forth with me for about five minutes. And I was really talking about the Ryan Reaves enforcer type and explaining how he felt that the Vegas Golden Knights are missing that physicality. And I'm not going to disagree with him. I understand there is some missing physicality. There isn't really a big bruiser on this team. But I've made the argument on this show, and I've made an argument in this video, that I truly don't believe Vegas needs that anymore. I think in the modern age of the NHL, that is essentially a dying breed. You're a guy who is simply a bruiser, an enforcer. That is something that I don't think we're going to see as much moving forward in the NHL. So really, to answer this question, does Vegas need an enforcer? The answer to that question, I'm going to say, is no. Vegas does not need an enforcer. Now, if you're in the comments section, if you're watching us on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub, if you're watching us on internet radio, on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media, if you have any comments, or if there's anything you want to add, comment down below. We try to read all comments after the show is over. We try to, engage with our followers and all the people who are watching this show. So if you have something you want to add, go right ahead. But to really end out this video, does Vegas need an enforcer? I'm going to lean towards no. I don't think that Vegas needs that. And Ryan Reeves, if he signed a one-day contract in the future, at age 38, 39, 40 years old, if he gets to that point in his career, would it be nice if he signed a one-day contract to the Vegas Golden Knights? Absolutely. Of course, that would be nice to see him sign that deal. But the reality is, I don't know if he would, or if he would sign with the St. Louis Blues, a team that he had been with for a decent amount of years. So this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. I do want to go over some ideas we're going to be talking about here on this channel. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the injuries that are going on involving your Vegas Golden Knights. There's a player that is currently in doubt for the Vegas Golden Knights, and we're going to cover that in an upcoming episode. We're also going to be talking about, a preview of what's to come for the Vegas Golden Knights, and that's going to be a really fun episode. I'm looking forward to talking about that, breaking down the preview of what's coming up next for the Vegas Golden Knights. And then by the end of this week, I also want to mention this, we are also going to be talking about the Las Vegas sports scene, because there is an event here in Vegas that is going to be at the same time as the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's going to be very interesting to see if there's any interference in that, if there's going to be any, kind of conflict between the two of those. What's the traffic situation going to look like? What's the fanfare going to look like? And how is the Vegas Golden Knights going to be affected by this event? So we're going to talk about all of that later on. I think, later this week, we're going to be making that video talking about that. So, roster moves for the Vegas Golden Knights, obviously they're trying to finalize that roster, getting it ready for the Vegas Golden Knights, what's coming up next. So there is so much that's going on involving the Vegas Golden Knights. And you know what, when it comes to what we're watching with Vegas, I just got back from the practice session. That's actually how this conversation came to be. I was at City National watching your Vegas Golden Knights practice, and having that conversation with a fan really piqued my interest in creating this video. I mean, I pretty much came home, sat down in my studio, and started recording and hitting this button for everyone watching all around the world. So you're going to see this at, the normal standard time that we upload these videos. But I also want to say, when it comes to Vegas Hockey Hub, we have our website, www.vegashockeyhub.com. We have our YouTube channel where we try to upload exclusive content. Vegas Hockey Hub Recap, that's going to be a thing that we're going to be uploading a lot coming up. So that's going to be a lot of fun doing those Vegas Hockey Hub recap shows. And we also have our Facebook page where we send links to all the stuff that we're doing, putting that on the Facebook. We have our Instagram page where we upload content of like the morning skates and the games that we go to. We have our live watch on Twitter where we tweet what's going on throughout the game. Any notable stuff that happens during the game, we tweet about it on our Twitter page at Vegas Hockey Hub. And then our TikTok, where we're trying to grow our TikTok audience here on Vegas Hockey Hub. So this was a fun episode. And thanks to that fan, by the way, for that conversation. You created an entire episode out of it. So thank you. And until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. This is Vegas Hockey Hub. And go Knights. Go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.